When is the last time that someone read to you? I'm meaning that kind of reading where you might sit together on the couch or a chair and you might pull a blanket up over you on a chilly night, or you might sit up attentively so that you don't miss a detail. In our family, it's not unusual to be read to, not just because we on occasion have little ones around and out might come never touch a T-Rex, bugbear, or the grinny granny donkey. Hee-haw. We read pieces of the news to one another, often accompanied by, have you heard or have you seen? And I think I've told you that in Advent, we often read poetry aloud to each other on an evening, and it's quite wondrous, really. Hope is a thing with feathers, it perches in the soul. Reading to someone is a kind of expression of love. It can be sharing words that have meaning or finding something new together. Reading to someone is an invitation to a common moment of imagination or reflection. And it takes us on a journey together. Reading to someone is a gift of presence for both the reader and the one who's listening. It was just about a year ago that the book group from TMUC read Ragged Company by Richard Wagamisi. When we gathered on Zoom, we discovered that in that book, there were passages that were so poignant, so true, that we had to read them aloud to one another. And so please, for a moment today, I invite you to be with me here. Let me read to you from Ragged Company before we turn our attention to the gospel. The passage I want to read comes in a discussion about love. What was love like, he asked. She smiled wistfully and looked off down the street, then crossed over to the railing, leaned on it, and looked up into the sky. It was like blue, she said finally. Like that blue you see when the light changes from day into night, a deep, eternal blue that gets put in your heart, and then when it's gone, for whatever reason, you discover that it lives in the sky right there where you can see it every night, a haunting, eternal blue. That's what it was like. And it goes on, like light, I suppose. What kind of light? Like the light that comes first thing in the morning. You know, on those nights when sleep eludes you and you find yourself sitting alone, watching the sky, waiting, the hours slipping by unnoticed. And suddenly there's a change to it all. Nothing you could ever pin down with language, no name for it. Just a subtle shift in the color and the nature of the sky. Yes, I've had nights like that. That's how I remember love. Arriving without fanfare, just a subtle shift in the sky. And when it happens, it's like watching morning light arrive. Everything around you takes on different shape and form and texture. The world becomes new. Yes, that's the magic, isn't it? Magic, maybe. I like to think that we attract it, that somehow we are the creators of it, that our lives allow us to build a little chamber inside of us that calls to it, beckons, lures it like a lightning rod catches the bolt from the sky. We create love with longing. Longing is the lightning rod, and it sits within us all. I know longing, and you're right, it makes us ready, eager, anxious. You've learned a lot, I suppose. Strange how that happens too. What do you mean? I think that becoming, changing, evolving is like the light you describe as love. You move around the world and suddenly there's a shift and you realize that you understand, comprehend, know, and it changes everything. Changes you. You've changed. Can't help it. No, I suppose you can't. I wanted to read that passage because I think it speaks to the gospel today. We're reading the gospel story of the wedding at Cana. It's in the Gospel of John, and this is the first miracle in the gospel. John begins writing the good news of the gospel of Jesus with beautiful poetry. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. John crafts the gospel in such a way that we are invited to faith from that very first moment. We are connected to creation. We are connected to the Creator. We are connected to God. As Jesus is introduced to us, it is through John the Baptist. John tells us that he has seen the Spirit descend on Jesus like a dove, and it remained on him. And from there, Jesus calls disciples on the next day. And on the day after that, Jesus goes to Galilee, where he calls more disciples. And on the third day, there's a wedding at Cana in Galilee. And the gospel tells the story. Jesus is at the wedding with his friends and his mother. And in Jesus' day, a wedding celebration would go on for days. And at some point, the party runs out of wine. Jesus' mother asks him to help. And when he hesitates, she says to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." And before we know it, Jesus has turned the water into wine. It's like for Jesus, the light in the sky has changed. It's like he's been touched by love, that eternal blue that lives in the sky where you can see it. And it's like everything has changed for him. Baptism, calling disciples, opening his own heart to this amazing love of God has meant that things cannot be contained. Love cannot be held. It has to be shared. And so this is also where the gospel starts with another message. As disciples follow, as Jesus brings new life to the wedding feast, it's a message that we are not helplessly defined by what is happening around us. Our experiences are not the only things that matter. We are shaped by how we respond to them. The disciples are shaped by the call to follow. Even Jesus is shaped by this. Jesus responds with generosity, with care about a celebration. Jesus is shaped by the goodness of life and abundance. The wedding and all those at it might also be shaped by the gift of wine that declares that abundance. This is the best, saved for last. Perhaps this is the moment of hope, that abundance will launch more abundance, that sharing will launch more sharing, that goodness will bring out goodness. And the gospel will tell us again and again that God's generous love will be like the blue of the sky and always with us. And that love, that light will call from us a blessing. It will be with us as we live, as we gain wisdom, as we learn more and more about ourselves and about our world. Remember those words? We create love with longing. Longing is the lightning rod, and it sits within us all. It makes us ready, eager, anxious. I think that becoming, changing, evolving is like the light you describe as love. You move around the world and suddenly there's a shift and you realize that you understand, comprehend, know, and it changes everything, changes you. Wise words. I believe we're ready right now. We're eager. We're anxious. We are ready for a world filled with love, something so overflowing with grace and life that not even a pandemic can steal it from us. We are ready to love others, and we are ready to be loved. Love, well, love changes everything. May love bring forth the best in each of us as we learn again and again that we are beloved of God. Thanks be to God, today and always. Amen.